What's up, guys? We got Drop, the latest Universal Blumhouse horror movie to come out. This movie is written by Gillian Jacobs and Chris Roach and directed by Christopher Landon. If you've seen, a couple of my other videos, Hard Eyes particular earlier this year, I talked about how I am a huge fan of Christopher Landon. Of course, the Happy Death Day movies, he did help co-write Hard Eyes, which is another one of my favorite movies this year. And so I'm a big fan of this dude. I wish he would have directed Scream 7. So anything with his name, I'm going to be super excited about. And, the trailers for this movie looked pretty good, looked pretty decent, a nice thriller, a nice premise. Also, the reviews were starting to come out for this movie and it excited me. They're pretty positive. So Violet starts getting all of these random messages, kind of starting off small, like, do you want to play a game? Let's do this. Quit ignoring me, because she's like, who the fuck is this dude? And, it starts escalating and slowly starts getting threatening. So Violet is basically being held hostage by these random airdrop messages, who she eventually figures out she has to do whatever this guy says, or she's going to kill her sister and her son, who is also being held hostage back at her house. So basically she's alone reading all these airdrop messages, as if she were to tell anybody else, if she were to let her date know in any sort of way, that they're going to kill her whole family. So she's having to read all these, kind of do whatever this guy says. And this just makes for really just one awful date. I mean, the fact that Henry stayed for as long as he did is just fucking crazy. I mean, any normal dude would have just bounced, would have left. But of course, there's, kind of a love story to this movie as well. But I mean, Jesus Christ, this dude puts up with so much. So a lot of this date, she's like looking around, trying to figure out who it is, looking at everybody, and almost everybody is on their phone. So she can't really figure it out at all, which obviously there's a bunch of people in this restaurant, but it just kind of also has that like whodunit factor to this movie, which it was thrilling. It was fun. It was entertaining to follow along with her. You're also trying to figure out who it is, because there's, a certain dude in the very beginning, when she first enters the restaurant, that's pretty obvious. And you're like, it's a little too obvious. But a lot of this movie, like the main chunk of it, the middle of it, is just her doing whatever this guy says. Whatever the airdrop messages say, she finally caves in because of how her family is being threatened, her little son, her sister. So she's going around doing these small tasks for this person, manipulating other people, lying to her date, Henry. So of course, a lot of movies, this isn't horror, but this is definitely a thriller. The main character is going to have some sort of past, some sort of trauma holding her back from certain things. There's a reason why she is on this first date for the first time, and why it's kind of really bad timing. But this movie is definitely fun, for the most part. There are also certain things that just don't really make sense, not necessarily plot holes, but just certain things that, how did this happen? Well, how did he get there? How did this get there? Like, there's something to do with a dollar bill or a $20 bill specifically, that somehow gets on a dinner plate. And it's just like, how would this dollar bill get under her salad? Just little stuff like that, that it's just almost impossible for that to happen. Or really just much like how slashers, the villain will teleport from one location to another, from scene to scene. And you're like, how the fuck did he get there so fast? That's what happens with this dollar bill. And not a lot of other stuff, but other stuff happens in this movie where it's just baffling. But once again, it is a movie, so it's not necessarily, a gripe. It's just a small, minor nitpick. The way the airdrop is also used isn't really how airdrop is used. I mean, this guy, Henry, shows her how, he can see everybody in the room. They have their little profile pic. It has your name, so people can airdrop stuff to you. I don't think that's how it works, to where if you're in a restaurant, clearly you can airdrop to some people if they have it on. But I mean, this guy is scrolling through, almost everybody in the restaurant, tens and tens, hundreds of people. And he's like looking around. They're like trying to figure it out, because he is helping her at first. And so he's looking at the phone, and he takes maybe like 4 or 5 seconds, looks around the whole restaurant, and he's like, yeah, everybody's here. It must be somebody else. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't look at everybody on this phone and then take a look around the restaurant and know everybody's there. What? I do think overall, though, that Christopher Landon did do a pretty decent job directing this film. It doesn't really feel like his sort of film, in some sort of ways. It was entertaining. It's pretty enjoyable, I don't know if I would necessarily want to rewatch it again, but it keeps you on your toes for sure. Just like the whodunit aspect I said, you're also trying to figure it out along with her. You're also kind of like wondering what's going on back at home. Is her son okay? Is the sister okay? She's, frequently checking on her phone. She has cameras throughout the house where she's able to watch everything. And when we do eventually find out, what's actually going on, what's really going on behind these scenes, who is this airdropper, it made sense. Of course, it's a little political, once again, somebody trying to cover up for somebody else. This guy, somebody has dirt on someone and they want to just get rid of it, get rid of some sort of evidence. It was a little typical, a lot of movies have this sort of idea to it. It wasn't necessarily original, but I do think it was filmed great. I think Christopher Landon does a lot of cool stuff with the camera in certain scenes, just following the characters and certain camera movement. So I definitely enjoy the cinematography. I do kind of feel like if Christopher Landon would have wrote this movie, it might have been just a little bit better, a little bit more engaging and thrilling, because it was entertaining, but it's not like great. It's not over the top, like awesome, where you're just like, wow, blown away. But it's also not like terrible, like a lot of these Blumhouse movies are. Do you have to see it in theaters? No, not necessarily. It's definitely a watch-at-home movie. Wait till it's on streaming, but I do like Christopher Landon a lot. I always want to see what this guy has to do, so I think he should be supported as well, but it's definitely more of an at-home streaming movie. But I do think Megan Faye does do a good job. I've never really seen her before in anything, but she does a pretty good job in the lead in this. I definitely could see her in other movies in the future, horror even, because she just evokes emotions when she needs to. Her family's being threatened. She's dealing with a lot of trauma, domestic abuse in her past, and it all just kind of shines through. And just even when you think she's happy or she's sitting at the bar, you can just kind of see it in her eyes, all this past trauma that she has. So I enjoyed her in this for sure. But yeah, those are just my thoughts, guys. I appreciate you watching. My name is Zach. Like, subscribe, comment. I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. But anyways, later.